Hey there everybody, Hero TJ at your service. Thanks for joining me, and welcome to another edition of Custom Conquest Showcase, the show where we take an ordinary Amiibo figure and transform it into a one-of-a-kind work of art. We've covered all kinds of customs on this show, but the figure featured today is not only quite possibly my favorite custom Amiibo I've ever made, but also deeply connected to, quite possibly, my favorite video game experience I've ever had. So grab your savage sword and shield as we take a look into what it took to create a custom Breath of the Wild style Lynel Amiibo. As I alluded to a moment ago, matching might with a Lynel in The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is one of the most thrilling and memorable game experiences of my life. But it didn't start there. 7-year-old fledgling Hero TJ first faced off against these lion-headed centaur-like beasts all the way back in the original Legend of Zelda, and they were just as fearsome then. Although the 8-bit sprite strained at even a vague suggestion of the ominous enemy's actual appearance, as presented in the instruction manual, Breath of the Wild buffed up the beast in a big way. And with the threat of an entire legion of Lynel looming in Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, I thought it was high time to honor this enemy with his own custom amiibo. Let's begin with the base. For his equine appendages, I looked to the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild Rider Link amiibo. I needed to ditch Link and remove the saddle, which was easy enough to achieve by softening the figure up with some boiling water. And don't tell the horse god Melania, but I also had to remove the horse's head. I really liked the rearing position of the legs, so I didn't feel I needed to make any modifications to the pose. But I did need to patch the indentations left from the saddle and straps. For this, I turned to Apoxie Sculpt 2-part modeling compound. I wrapped the lower legs with some thin strips of athletic tape because it added a nice texture and was extremely easy to apply. The hardware on the left hind leg is an aluminum O-ring, the same sort you might use if you wanted to fashion yourself some lightweight chainmail. I knew one of the most key components to this custom would be a compatible torso. The imposing presence of Lynel in Breath of the Wild is in large part due to their massive and muscled physique. The torso needed to be incredible and hulking. I didn't have to mull it over long before a perfectly formed figure sprang to mind. For this critical component, I utilized an incredible Hulk figure. I quickly discovered there was no shortage of choices when it came to choosing a Marvel Hulk figure. Hulk action figures have been around since the late 70s, so you can imagine there's more options than you can shake a Master Sword at. My primary focus was scale and proportion. After a little light internet sleuthing, I tracked down this Hulk vs. SUB-ULTRON 003 figure, and it was perfect. After I connected the Hulk torso to the horse half with a paperclip armature and some super glue, I finessed the transition with a little Apoxie Sculpt and the fusion was seamless. I did want the appearance of the arms to be a little wider, so I gently pried them a little bit away from the body, inserted a wedge, and patched the pits with Apoxie Sculpt. Most of the Lynel's armor was requisitioned from a Tournament Knight figure produced by a German manufacturer by the name of Schleich. I asked my sister-in-law from Germany how to say that, and I think there's a good chance I probably still butchered it. They're best known for their realistic animal figures, but they've also produced a rather wide array of Knight figures over the years, sold at US retailers. And I picked this TAURUS Tournament Knight figure up some many years ago for no real reason other than I thought it looked cool, so I had little reservation about parsing him for parts. For the armor worn about the Lynel's waist, I carefully shaved off one of the Knight's leg tassets and connected it to a rubber band. For the leather baldric, I opted for a trimmed down strip of electrical tape for ease of application. You may catch a glimpse of another O-ring there, and the hardware on his chest comes courtesy of our Knight figure's vesicule. Our Knight made one final contribution in the form of the Lynel's horns. I really liked the shape, but I felt they were a little too smooth, so I pinched them along the length with the round-nosed pliers to add a more ribbed appearance. The Lynel's shoulder spalder is actually the knee armor from a Skylanders SuperCharger Hammer Slam Bowser figure. You may recall sometime back I customized one of these big bad bosses into a clown car, which meant I happened to have a bottom half hanging about, and felt it was a suitable fit here. For the face, I briefly considered sticking with the Incredible Hulk figure. While it definitely conveyed intensity, I didn't feel his features resembled the Lynel closely enough. When I was a kid, I used to collect all kinds of little plastic Disney figures, from Mickey Mouse to Darkwing Duck and every Aladdin in between. I probably amassed several hundred of the little things over the years, including one rather beastly character by the name of, well, actually I don't know if I ever caught his name, so let's just call him Beast, of Beauty and the Beast fame. The Beast's face is already a curious amalgam of different animals, replete with heavy brow, broad nose, and fangs. Just the qualities I was looking for, and at 2.5 inches, just the right scale. I decided I'd give this little Beast figure a much cooler transformation than the one the animated version experienced at the end of the Disney film. Initially, I didn't anticipate the face sculpt would require any alterations, but after I primed the figure, I realized the nose was a bit more bulbous than I first thought, so I shaved and sanded it until I achieved a more big cat-like look. The Lynel's voluminous line-like mane is certainly one of the more defining features, and Lynel hair isn't limited to the head. They also boast tufts on the forearms, fists, and tail. A furry feat of this red-maned magnitude required the cooperation of a whole cadre of characters. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the main event. Introducing your barbershop brigade, the hairstyle heroes whose contributions made the mane you see before you today. First up, we have the Smash Series Bowser. His flaming locks really fired up the sideburns. Next, we have fellow Breath of the Wild alum, Champion URBOSA, whose flowing red tresses are on display front and center. And who can forget GameStop exclusive promo minifigure baby Winston, who not only filled in the beard, but also the forearms and hand hair. And we mustn't leave out the Skylanders SuperChargers Stealth Elf. The base of her blue braid made the perfect Lynel beard bottom. And finally, the hoof hair was already there, thanks to our Rider Link horse, who also contributed the tail. However, I did remove it, trisect it, and string it all back together with a paperclip and some stylish black dividers before reattaching it to the horse half hindquarters. Then I unified all these random and disparate pieces with some Apoxie Sculpt to fill in any gaps and smooth out the transitions. That more or less brings us to the end of our basic figure assembly, but no Lynel would be complete without his weapons. The Lynel sword, Lynel shield, and Lynel bow. I totally love the look of these, but seeing as how unique the designs are, I knew I was probably going to have to construct them from scratch. For the Lynel sword, I got a big boost from my younger brother, who is pretty handy with a grinder. I drew the pattern on a raw chunk of plastic and he ground it into shape for me in his workshop. I think he did an amazing job, so I'm really grateful for his help. I added the edge damage with an X-acto Knife. I carved the guard, grip, and pommel out of random bits of plastic, and created a paperclip tang I could feed right into the Lynel's hand. Finally, I connected the guard and pommel with a few links from a chain necklace. The Lynel shield is such a hodgepodge of random bits. I cut the double blades out of some scrap rubber. The disc is off a Disney Infinity Sam Flynn figure based on the movie Tron Legacy. You saw that one, right? Anybody? Yeah, I didn't either. I do like the figure though. Sometime back I customized a couple Amiibo figures of me and my amazing wife. As you can see, they prominently utilized the Disney Infinity Tron figures, so that little disc piece was left over from that. Throw in some rubber band straps, a toothpick grip, and rivets punched out of a plastic spork, and we got ourselves a Lynel shield. And for my last trick, I'll do my best to break down this bow. Remember that custom of my amazing wife from like 5 seconds ago? So that came from a Disney Infinity Tron Korra figure, which also came with a little disc. So I was able to repurpose that as the bow's grip wheel by adding a few notches with my X-acto Knife. You know how action figures with small accessories often come attached to some kind of frame? Well, the upper and lower limbs of the bow come from one such frame, only this one was in the shape of a wheel. Sorry to say I don't remember where it was from, but I hung onto it in the event a customizing occasion such as this might arise. I folded a tiny strip of electrical tape on each end and added some plastic sport rivets. The sight blade and the two string knock blades are cut from a plastic table mat. I added a couple necklace links to each end of the bow and strung it with a piece of thread. Now that our Lynel was armed and ready, it was time to move on to the painting process. I began by covering the figure with a gray primer. Then I applied my base coat with Vallejo model color paints. Even though Lynel come in a few different color varieties, I decided to stick to the scheme of the red-maned Lynel because it was the first one I encountered in the game. It made the strongest impression on me, and I also just happened to prefer the color contrast between the hair and skin tone. Next I applied a darker wash layer, which is basically a thinned out ink that deepens the detail by finding its way into the creases. The next step was to apply highlights, which in this case I achieved with a technique called dry brushing. Using a lighter tone in the same family of colors, a dry brush with very little paint will adhere to the outermost ridges of the figure, adding a nice level of contrast and definition to subtle aspects of the sculpt, which is highly effective for features such as hair and muscle striation. And for the final touch, I employed the thinnest of brushes to roughen up this battle-hardened beast with some scars. It was a blast battling Lynel in the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. I look forward to facing them in force in Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, and I hope I'll get to go against them again in the Breath of the Wild sequel sometime in the future. It's not very often I find myself tempted to customize an Amiibo figure that won't have character-appropriate functionality. That's why you see so many Super Smash Bros. Customs on this show. I love making the physical figure match the in-game appearance, but when it came to customizing the Lynel Amiibo, I was willing to make an exception, and I'm really glad I did, because of all the figures I've worked on, this is probably the one I'm most proud of. It was fun to assemble, it provided a satisfying challenge, and I'm honored to have the opportunity to share the final result with you. So glad you found the time to join me here on Custom Conquest Showcase. Here's wishing you victory in your next artistic endeavor. Maybe I'll be back here again to showcase even more custom Amiibo figures. Let me know if that's something you'd like to see in the comments section below. Maybe I'll see you then. For now, this is Hero TJ signing out. Thanks for playing.